All right, thank you very much for being here today and joining us for the last panel of this afternoon. And really, really pleased to be with my fellow panelists, Kumaran from Microsoft, Julie, the CTO from Endawas, and of course Nandu from MAS. So we're going to change tacks a little bit, right, to talk a little bit about the role of deep tech and AI in wealth management. And if I can just start off, right, and just kick this off, if I could ask Kumaran just to scene set a little bit for us, right? What really is AI? And we've been hearing about Gen AI, right? Is there a difference between traditional AI and Gen AI? Maybe if you could just
Sure.
set the scene.
Sure. Yeah, no, totally. I think we need to take a step back and understand that this is not totally new when we talk about AI. AI is all about getting a model, the machine to kind of do some sort of decision making for you. I think if you go even slightly narrower and you kind of do a subset, if that bigger Venn diagram is AI, and within that bubble you talk about what traditional machine learning or classical machine learning, which is the background that I come from, you talk about whether an individual can buy a loan, can buy a car, can he even get a loan, etc. It's kind of like a binary output or do regression. So that's kind of like classical machine learning. And in that particular field, you're talking about data that comes in and then the output, right? It's very, very structured. It's very limited. It's like tables, rows, very specific, right? Then, if you move further along, you talk about deep learning, right? And this is where you're talking about, also having a very structured output, but the data that you get in is actually fairly unstructured. You're talking about images, you're talking about voice, you're talking about a lot of text, right? And now what we're seeing is Gen AI. And Gen AI is the reason why it's kind of like a step change is because your output, right, what you actually get back as a user is very varied. It's not limited, right? Which means in the past where you had a lot of narrow models to do very narrow things, but any business process is a collection of individual processes, right? So the white space in between these processes was actually the biggest problem to solve for. And Gen AI kind of breaks that down, and you're able to use this one model across the entire business process. So I hope that makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. I think maybe over to you, Sapnendu. MAS has twin responsibilities, right? The responsibility of innovation, right? And looking at how AI can actually be used by financial services and financial institutions. And then the other responsibility of regulation. And I just wanted us to maybe talk a little bit first about what sort of opportunities you see, for the usage of AI for financial institutions, and what do you think, some of the major challenges are?
Thanks for having me. This is the worst time to give a panel because I'm just watching the World Cricket and Australia is doing marvelous. If you are an Australian fan, you should watch the cricket right now. It's an amazing cricket match going. Anyway, so that's kind of is occupying 80% of mind, the whole cricket thing. Question, regulation. What can we do? Well, MAS has been over investing on AI for the last 3-4 years in terms of policy choices. 3-4 years back, we started Project Veritas. And the intent was that we anticipated that this was going to be quite a mainstream technology. And instead of waiting for things to go out of control, we started Veritas, which is essentially talking about how do we create a responsible AI narrative in Singapore. And just before Veritas was launched, we had the FEED principles out there. And the question for us that, okay, as a regulator, you can ask industry to be fair, ethical, accountable, and transparent, but how do you do it in a software world? So instead of asking banks to follow a principle, we thought we should indulge together and start coding and figure out how to do it. It is a 3-year journey for us, and we have done 4 use cases. And we have put in the public domain an open source code where you can look at how this code has been developed to allow software companies, banks themselves deploying AI to able to ensure, at least reasonably ensure a framework for them to ensure these are conforming to the FIAT principles. And then came the Gen AI piece. And we again proactively got into that space, and we started a project called MindForge. And it is going to follow the same path. It's a bit of a tactical shift there, primarily because we still don't understand that well. So we are going in a use case based model there. We have done a co-pilot program out there, but what we are looking at from now going forward, that when I think the kind of use case we have today, we don't see a dramatic transformation taking place in banks right now. The focus banks are having in AI are marginal in terms of increasing their own efficiency gain. And I think while it's good to talk about that we can do AI, a lot of transformation, there's no real shift in terms of the core technology infrastructure. In fact, I asked a few months back as a head of AI for a large multinational bank, how much tech budget you have for AI? He says, hardly anything. So the tech budget allocation for financial sector on AI is actually very small. And most of the AI, they're already either using it as part of the software services they're getting for very foundational investment in terms of technology infrastructure is very low there. So I think there's still a long way to go. But as a regulator, we will push ourselves to see how much we can extract from this tech opportunity. But unlike other regulators in Singapore, we do things differently. We will work and code together to get it right.
Okay, that's really good. So that's really interesting, actually. If you're talking about AI, and I think it's nascent, right? In the sense that financial institutions are starting to use technology, but you're not seeing that big step change or that big transformation. And in a way, I guess that's good because they're being very responsible.
I don't know if they're responsible. But that's an easy way of saying that don't not do anything. So sometimes that could be other reasons. I don't know.
Okay. You also mentioned this word that's been buzzing around, and that's co-piloting.
Yes.
Right? And is that something that you think you'll see a little bit more of?
Yeah, we'll see, and I think it's important for regulators to be also demonstrate this intent of co-piloting themselves. And one of the use cases we are picking up is our own space, which is regulatory. How can we seize a co-pilot which can allow us to industry to frame a response to a regulatory stance? So yes, you will see more of co-pilot as a safer way, but I still believe the tech budget or capital allocation on AI is not adequate enough to really push the transformation. I don't know, I'm open to getting criticized on this. Somebody can question me from the audience on that significant budget allocation on AI, is it really true? I have not seen myself.
That'll be interesting. Maybe if you could provide some feedback on Slido, and then we'll see, whether this is indeed true. But Julie may be able to answer that question, right? As a financial services firm, are you actually, do you actually see a change, right, in terms of the way technology is used?
Do you have the budget to do the change?
Yeah, and maybe you can help us answer that, right? What are you seeing in the market?
I actually see a lot of excitement from CTOs, but he's right. I mean, it's actually not that easy to get buy-in from the business stakeholders, because it's usually things like this. You have to showcase that it really brings a real value add to the organization, and that there has to be at least a couple of production use cases that are really delivering values, and a lot of people in the industry haven't seen that yet. So, and also there's a lot of fears around Gen AI, hallucinate, things like that are still, industry, I think is still, learning the Gen AI in overall. And financial industry is pretty sensitive industry for Gen AI. I mean, we are regulated. and we don't want to, we don't want to make mistake of, using AI to give some wrong advice to our customers, for example. So it is true that budget is like, we just had quite a bit of a budgeting discussion with CFO this week and last week. So
I'm just helping.
yeah.
Go for it.
But so a lot of CTOs are what they are trying to do, including myself, is really like develop something on the side, because the difference between Gen AI and the previous AI in machine learning, as Kumara mentioned, Gen AI is easier to use and easier to understand its output. So we want to like develop some use cases and showcase to the business so that we get conviction, and then therefore we get budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you've been thinking about it and discussing it. Where will you be able to deploy AI? Is it in the customer journey, in the front end?
Right.
Where can you integrate AI into your whole process?
So that's a really good question. And when I first started, as I started using ChatGPT myself, I actually like some sense of urgency developed in myself, and I really wanted to try something with it for Indoos. And I thought that I could do one of the two things. One is we use it to boost our internal productivity, or we use it to develop some cool features to enhance our customer experiences. I thought it was actually like a binary choice. You can't develop something that benefit both sides of the world. But then I had a lot of discussions and brainstorming with various teams at Indoos, and then we found this use case of with client experience team where they're currently spending a lot of time answering questions from our customers about our platform that comes, and these messages are coming in various different channels, but primarily over WhatsApp. And when I first look at this list of questions in our database, I was like, two thoughts. I was like, oh wow, I feel like somewhat sorry to our CX team that they need to spend a lot of time answering this question themselves. And then I was like, these are the questions that may not be so straightforward for our customers to find the answers just by browsing our web pages, but these are the questions that really, strictly speaking, don't really deserve human interactions. AI, as of today, can answer these questions quite easily with right guardrails. So we started developing a CX bot, which we will share with everyone later on. But then, to answer your question, I think, as long as you have a right guardrails, monitoring systems, and accountable person monitoring the interaction between the bot and your customers, actually, technology is quite ready to be presented to the customers.
Okay, thank you. So, there's a little bit of, you've heard Julie talk about CX bot. Please stay to the end of the panel. I think he's going to talk a little bit more about that. But you've talked about guardrails,
yes,
right? So maybe a question for Kumara, and I think, what strategies can businesses adopt, right, to effectively leverage AI while ensuring that there's regulatory compliance or guardrails and security?
Sure. And I'll get to that in just a bit. I think I just wanted to comment two things. One is, I think the amount of money that's spent on AI is relative, right? I would say as a percentage of total IT budget, I would say yes, it's still kind of drop in the ocean. But if you look at like in Japan, for example, and with we have a mechanism to kind of deploy a lot of OpenAI compute power on the use cases that they want to do, and within the snap of a finger, they're willing to do it, right? Because that is that appetite, that those pain points are so real for this institutionalized financial institutions. But yes, as a percentage of how much they spend overall on IT, it's still very small. But I think that goes to first time, at least I've been in this space for a long time, but for the longest time, it has always been business use cases driving what the technology decision should be. But now what I'm seeing is the art of possible with Gen AI is just so huge that a lot of businesses are coming in there, business leaders are asking, what can this do? And I'll give you a quick, maybe story or example, right? Credit risk. And everyone is like, look, credit risk models, we spend years and millions of dollars perfecting the best model so that, because it's lending, right? So we don't want to get that wrong. And everybody's like, look, Gen AI, no way, right? No way it can actually help you because you can't decide. You can't decide whether this person can get a loan or not. And that's totally true. But what about the inputs into your model, right? What about the data that actually goes into that model to decide eventually whether you get a loan or not? Today, we're so limited by the structured data that we have. What are the unstructured data? How do you actually pass through that data and build features, tag the data, look at the metadata, so that you can input it into your model so you get a better outcome? So Gen AI can actually do that. Excuse me. And that's where we're seeing today when we look at a risk officer come into it and say, wow, I can now tag my data in a much more efficient way and get access to more swaths of data of that particular individual and feed it into my credit model, right? So I think that is now happening, and we're slowly seeing more and more demands on the IT budget to be channeled towards this kind of use cases. And on that part, with risk and guardrails and specifics, I think it's the classic, tale of people, process, technology. I think in terms of making sure that there are the right tools, the technology part, there's so many. There's open source, there's Fairlearn, and within Microsoft, we didn't just wake up one day and say that responsible AI is important, right? So there's been a lot of tools, even within our ecosystem. I understand that the board is being built on Azure. You have prompt flow, you have a lot of dashboards that are in place. So that's the tool part. I think we now partner. I think so we focus a lot on the enterprise, right? And the enterprise clients are coming to say, so how do you do it, Microsoft? So how do you build products that have these right guardrails in place? And the answer is also because we set up an Office of Responsible AI, right? And Natasha Crompton leads it in the US, but they roll up to our overall legal team. And we are now partnering with them to teach them, right? Teach them what it actually means to have the champions, to make sure that you engage in ethical practices even when it's partnership with data and so on and so forth. So there is like a proper end-to-end view of responsible AI, which is like people, process, and technology. And it's not just something that you put on a slide and it looks good. Like it's actually operationalized at scale within Microsoft, and I think we have the responsibility to share it with our partners and with our clients as well. So that's how we do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So you talk about responsible AI, and I'm looking at some of the questions here. And if I can sum up in one word, there is a question as to whether or not we can trust AI, okay? So some of the questions are, will customers really be willing to be served by AI, okay? What about consumer protection? Is there a risk of AI becoming self-aware? And really, at the end of the day, I think these are questions about, can I trust the usage, right? So what would you say? I think we are also all consumers here. What would you say to a consumer who's concerned about the usage of AI? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a question for everyone, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a stab at this, right? I mean, this is a very, very tough one. But I would say to that consumer, like, you're right. You're right to be concerned. And I think trust is not about the AI application or the AI tool in and of itself and the model. It's actually the institution, right? It's the trust in the institution. So if you're saying, look, am I being served by this particular model? Am I getting recommendations? Like, who's actually doing it? Who's actually building that, right? And is that particular institution or enterprise engaging and being completely transparent? So I think we have, say, for example, 6 principles, right, that we are very transparent about. We have fairness. We have 6 principles that we outline, right? So if I was a consumer and I had concerns, which is fair, right, I can just look it up, right? What does trust actually mean? What does responsible AI actually mean? It's a loaded term, right? So if you break it down into these 6 components and you read it and you understand it, then you're more willing to engage in such a topic, right? So I think that's where my mind space is always at. Once you get educated, once you understand it, I think consumers will be more willing to participate.
Yeah. And look where it's coming from. as
I'm
well.
not sure that question is framed properly. I really don't care what technology Endavas use. My trust is with Endavas as a company.
Absolutely.
If whatever they're advising me, I trust Sam. If he does something wrong, I'm going to call him. I don't care of the AI or somebody sitting behind doing something for me. The responsible AI comes from a regulatory stance on Endavas. When they implement that technology, they've got to ensure that they've got to protect consumers' interest. If they cannot do it, bad luck for them.
Yeah.
But from consumer perspective, this is a moot point. They expect the most appropriate product for them at the cheapest price at the time they need it. If AI can help that process and get it to that level of expectation, I think consumers will be happy. They really don't care whether there's AI behind it. The person who should care are the institutions which are regulated. They better get it right.
Yeah, really, that's a really good point, right? So as a consumer, you look at whether you trust that financial institution to see whether or not, the product that they're delivering, they are responsible for that, right? And so you look at that, and I think that's a good point, in terms of rather than thinking about do we really trust AI itself, right? I think, what you mentioned, Kumaran, about having an Office of Responsible AI. So whatever you roll out, right, it's something that actually will be considered. Julie, how about from you?
Yeah, so for our CX Bot project, we didn't start the project by writing a code. We actually started by writing a document. We came up with our own internal guidelines and framework on how we want to evaluate the performance and safety of any AI bot we're going to build in the future. And that framework was built on top of FIT principles from MAS. And in that guidelines, it states how we will evaluate. So we came up with like 65 questions we'll ask against any bot we're going to develop, like that tests against its sensitivity against political question, gender question, but basically everything that's stated in FIT principle. And also we agreed on like how we're going to monitor the bot's responses. So we develop our in-house system that can monitor in real-time interaction between the bot and the customer. So we started by building the guardrail. We didn't start by building the bot itself. And in terms of earning customers' trust, I think it's really up to how we handle this as an organization is spot on. Like, it's not really about whether customers will put in their trust in the technology that's behind the AI, like which is like OpenAI or GPT-4. It's really like their trust has to be with the implementator, which is Endavas in this case. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to introduce your the CX bot?
Yeah, so it's
Is the FIT principle compliant?
yeah, we think so. Our chief compliance officer is okay with it.
Okay.
So it's currently in beta mode. Please scan this QR code. So our client experience bot is currently integrated to WhatsApp, our WhatsApp channel. It's in beta testing mode. We're actively testing it and building it. We've been internally testing it for a while. We think it's okay to open it today to just strictly to this group. But we need more feedbacks for us to be able to go live with it. So we are planning to go live with it in a week or two. Hopefully there's no crazy hallucination happening or anything. And please be assured, we're not connected to public OpenAI. We have our own private OpenAI cloud running under Azure. So this morning, OpenAI had a 4-hour system outage. Our bots were not impacted by it at all because we are running on Microsoft Azure. So please send us feedbacks.
Please started using it now.
It's safe.
Yeah, try to jailbreak it.
It's on Microsoft. It's safe.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Please help us improve the bots. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess feedback is very important.
Very
right?
important. Very important. Yeah. I like last week. I thought it was pretty strong already, and I asked my wife to test it, and in 2 minutes she jailbroke it. Like,
wow.
yeah. I was like, how? Yeah, so
That's why
yeah.
you need a wife.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're almost at time, but I just wanted maybe to sum it up a little bit, right? I think there is, of course, a lot of interest in AI, and I think here in Singapore and the MAS, certainly back in 2018, has already established the FEED principles, and with the Veritas project. There's a question as to whether it's going to be a step change or whether it's going to be incremental. But I think my panelists will all agree it's something that definitely financial institutions will consider on a going forward basis. And for here as consumers, I see that you've trusted Julie here and trying out the CX bot. So that's great, right? So again, I think having trust in the institutions that you deal with, I think that's a really important point to take away as well. With that, I want to thank you and thank my panelists as well. Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Welcome.